Hey guys, before we start the video, I've got a quick update for you. Unfortunately, we're currently facing some issues with this channel. But don't worry, I've got a backup channel ready for you. From now on, all my new content will be uploaded there. The link is in the pinned comment and description. Please go there, subscribe, like the latest video, and comment, I'm here. It may seem like a small thing, but your support means a lot and will help me keep making better content for you. A young man and his uncle walked into a police station. Jamie Parsons was there to report his little sister Erica missing, but this was not a recent disappearance. Erica hadn't been seen in almost 2 years. He last saw her in November 2011. His uncle Scott was with him and said that he had heard various stories about where Erica was, but he hadn't seen her either. A young girl described as quiet and shy, who was 13 years old when she was last seen, had been gone for that long and, up until now, had not been reported missing. On the 24th of February 1998, Carolyn Parsons gave birth to a baby girl named Erica. Not long after, Erica's aunt and uncle, Casey and Sandy Parsons, parents of other children, including Jamie, would adopt her. When Jamie talked to the officers, he said he had asked his parents where she was and why she wasn't at the house on Miller Chapel Road. They explained that they had taken her to Asheville, where her biological grandmother had lived, a woman called Irene Goodman, known as Nan. This story was bizarre, but as he continued to talk, a very disturbing picture was being painted. Jamie said that his parents had been both physically and mentally abusive towards Erica constantly. Not only that, but even after she had gone missing, Sandy and Casey had continued to receive checks on Erica's behalf, totaling around $600 a month, even though she was no longer at the property. The next thing for the officers to do was to speak to Sandy and Casey Parsons. They both vehemently denied Jamie's story of them being abusive. They said he had been told to move out of the house after a fight with his mother, and he had made it up as a result. They were adamant that in 2011, Erica had gone to live with her biological grandmother in Asheville. They said that Brooke, their biological daughter, had gone with them. This wasn't what Brooke told the investigators. She said she hadn't gone with them. What on earth was the truth, and more importantly, where was Erica? Casey told the investigators she had contacted Nan Goodman via Facebook, but was not able to give them any current contact information for her, even though she was allegedly caring for a child that Casey was the legal guardian of. She also couldn't show them her Facebook page. The more the investigators dug, the weirder it all became. Erica's biological grandmother had actually died in 2005. This was more than 8 years before she was reported missing and more than 6 years since she was last seen by anybody. Investigators would later say that this Nan didn't actually exist at all. Erica's biological mother said that Erica had no biological relatives living in that area. The lawyer who was representing Sandy and Casey at the time then hinted that Carolyn should know how to find the missing child. Nan came to Casey and Sandy through Carolyn. That's who brought Nan to them and probably knows who Nan is. But Carolyn hit back at these claims. Nan and Irene don't exist. The only two people that know the truth are the only two people that won't give the truth, she said. Casey would later say that she had been tricked and that the woman Erica had been taken to live with was an imposter. This extremely unusual story was getting weirder and weirder by the day, and nobody knew what the truth was. The day after Erica was reported missing, the two youngest children were removed from the home. And just a few days later, on the 6th of August 2013, the Rowan County Sheriff's Office said that Casey and Sandy were being uncooperative with the investigation. 6 days later, Carolyn returned from New Orleans to talk to the police. She later said that she had received updates about Erica via Facebook, but hadn't seen her since the 5th of January 2011. I mean, as a parent, as a person, as an individual, a family member, I just keep hoping and praying that she's alive somewhere, that she's out there somewhere, that one of these days she's going to come forward. As the searches were carried out 2 weeks after Erica was reported as missing, the street was closed off. One neighbor told news reporters one police officer showed up, and the next thing you know, there was probably 25 or 30 cars there. They're walking around the house. The backyard of the family home was looked at multiple times, but nothing of note or interest was found. A month after Jamie had reported her as missing, The FBI were drafted in to help in the search with local law enforcement, and searches were conducted several times of the family home. The search warrants that had been returned in August 2013 revealed that dozens of items had been taken from the house, which included a plastic bag with Jean Bernier Ramsey magazines and a Jean Bernier Ramsey book with notes inside about remodeling a house. Jean Bernier Ramsey was, of course, a 6-year-old girl found murdered in her own home on Christmas Day in 1996. It is a case that remains unsolved and continues to be discussed and talked about today. The search warrant also said that a section of drywall from the closet had been cut out and removed as there were red stains on it. The baseboards from the closet had been removed and sent off for testing. A pair of jeans also with red stains were taken out of the house. A week after the search, another set of search warrants were released after they had looked into a storage building owned by Sandy. Removed from here were pieces of a vacuum cleaner, a videotape, school records, a hammer, and teeth. These search warrants referred to the original search, saying, during that search, investigators failed to locate any evidence of Erica Parsons still living here or any evidence that her room or personal living area remained in the home. The police said that the evidence that was found all indicated to Casey and Sandy knowing that Erica was not going to be coming back. Another area that needed to be looked into was the allegation that Casey and Sandy had continued to receive money for Erica, even though she wasn't living with them. Officials applied for a warrant relating to the finances. In the application for the warrant, it stated, resulted in the delay or outright denial to report Erica Lynn Parsons as missing in a timely manner. One thing was clear, the family had definitely been receiving money for Erica, and this financial aspect needed to be looked into more closely. Working with the FBI, investigators were able to track down the bank accounts used by Sandy and Casey. These were held with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and SunTrust Bank. Erica was adopted through public adoption, and she had additional needs, so the family were eligible to receive more than $600 a month from the Department of Social Services in order to care for her. The lawyer for the couple said they could continue to receive the payments as they were Erica's legal guardians and caregivers. But why hadn't they alerted the police? The attorney said that Casey and Sandy did not consider Erica to be missing as they had left her with her grandmother. Whenever Casey and Sandy went before the media or were interviewed, the police would watch them and listen to what they said closely. There was one thing that immediately caught their attention. They would refer to Erica in the past tense. In contrast, when Carolyn was interviewed, she referred to Erica in the present tense. In an interview she did on the 5th of August with WBTV, she said, "She is my biological daughter. I wanted to know that I do still love her." But the couple were sticking to their story. Sandy Parsons said, "There's been sightings. I've had family members call me recently and say there was a sighting at a rest stop. We asked, why didn't you call the cops? Don't wait and call us. Call the cops. The only thing I want right now is Erica to call home. Tell us she's safe and get my 2 babies. Nobody realizes that there's 2 small kids involved in this that do want to come home." Here he was referring to the 2 youngest children who had been removed from the home the day after Erica was reported missing. Casey and Sandy fought to regain custody of the 2 children, and they were scheduled to meet with workers from the Department of Social Services, and later that month, the judge was going to determine if they would be allowed to return home. When looking into the background of the couple, it emerged they had been looked at and family members had called the Department of Social Services, also known as DSS, before. In March 2002, DSS investigated allegations of abuse towards Erica. They found nothing and said that she did not appear to be afraid of them. Investigators had now spoken to a lot of people, including members of the family, but Casey was having none of it. The lawyer for the family said the allegation should not be taken as fact. The couple were doing everything to try and find Erica, adding that family members were inventing stories. Casey Parsons had homeschooled the children, and officials at the North Carolina Department of Non-Public Education said that standardized test results and attendance records were submitted for the children, but couldn't confirm if Erica's documents had been included. When asked about this story about Erica allegedly living with her biological grandmother, she said she had been contacted by this woman on Facebook, but the account was later deactivated. The mobile number for this woman had also been disconnected. The couple even made an appearance on the Dr. Phil show, and Casey would later tell him that they never went to the house, but saw photographs of it. Casey also told a reporter that they had let Erica visit this woman's home, and ultimately Erica didn't want to come back. At one point, Casey even found a girl on social media that shared the same name as Erica and told the Rowan County Department of Social Services that this was their child and that she lived in Greensboro. There were so many stories, but not one of them was making sense. Investigators scoured various databases looking for someone using Erica's social security number or someone that might have got a driver's license in her name or any other ID, but they never found anything. According to statements made by Casey, Erica met Carolyn at a Whataburger in 2011, and according to Carolyn, after this, Casey said that Erica didn't want to see her anymore. This case had clearly affected the community very deeply, and on the 23rd of August, neighbors held a vigil outside the home, praying for any good news of Erica's whereabouts. Billboards were put up around the area, and on the 26th of August, Casey and Sandy were interviewed again by the FBI. The following day, Casey and Sandy packed up a truck and moved out of the area, reportedly to get away from the intense media interest. When speaking to Sandy's stepfather, he said Sandy would visit a couple of times a year, only occasionally having Erica with him. His stepdad said he hadn't seen her since either 2008 or 2009. This was not only a bizarre case, but an extremely complex one. A vulnerable young girl, and apparently nobody had any clue where she was. But there was one thing that the investigators did know. People do not just vanish. Carolyn held many vigils for Erica, saying, "Figure the more places we have vigils, the more we can get Erica's name, story, and face out there." On the 16th of January 2014, a judge ordered that the children who had been removed were not to go back to their parents, but instead stay with their aunt. The children were later removed from the custodial home after what was referred to as major behavioral issues. As investigations continued, there was still no solid evidence relating to Erica's whereabouts. On the 30th of January 2014, the FBI offered a $25,000 reward alongside the reward offered by the Rowan County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Orton said that Prevent Child Abuse Rowan had added $5,000 to the reward as well. It had now been nearly a year since Erica was reported missing, and there was finally a new development. Federal agents with guns drawn had kicked down the Parsons door. Casey and Sandy Parsons were arrested and charged in Fayetteville, North Carolina, with 76 counts allegedly committed between February 2010 and August 2013. The counts included theft of government funds, mail fraud, tax fraud, conspiracy to defraud the government, and identity theft. The pair had allegedly received money from the government for adoption assistance, Medicaid, Social Security, and food and nutrition services for a dependent who was not living with them. It was also alleged that Casey had fraudulently used the identities of other people as dependents and submitted false information when prepping for federal tax returns. While they waited to go on trial for the 76 counts of theft and fraud, they were monitored closely by law enforcement. Electronic monitoring systems were fitted to them, and they were required to meet periodically with a pretrial officer assigned to them. One of the conditions of their release was that they had to remain in eastern North Carolina and not break any laws, and soon the trial would start. As part of the fraud trial, a judge listened to various members of the family, including Jamie, Casey, and Casey's sister Robin. The scope of the trial would be wide-reaching, and the details of what Erica had allegedly endured would come to light. Casey's sister Robin testified that she had been asked to watch Erica for a few months, so Casey wouldn't kill her. She added that Erica often had many marks and bruises, and that Casey couldn't stand the sight of Erica's face. Jamie would add to these disturbing details, saying that Erica would be banned from using the bathroom, forced to eat dog food or food from the trash. She would be starved, had to drink water from a dog bowl or the bathroom sink, excluded from family activities, and have her fingers broken deliberately. She would be locked in the closet, and if she went to the bathroom in there out of desperation, she would be punished severely. Erica was not allowed to sleep in a bed. She had never even owned one. She was forced to sleep on the floor. Jamie said there was even a time when Casey had put Erica's hand on a hot stove and burned her. He said that he and the other children had also partaken in the abuse against her, from when she was 5 years old to when he was 16. He said he once even broke her arm before deciding not to hit her again. His sibling Brooke told a detective that her mother had got the children to go to Walmart for first aid supplies so that a makeshift cast could be made for Erica's arm. They did this rather than taking her to get proper medical attention for a serious and painful injury. Family members said in statements that her arm showed signs of never having healed properly. On the witness stand, Jamie said that his mother had told his siblings, Sadie and Toby, that they should pull Erica's hair if she didn't want to play with them. Jamie said Casey would encourage the children to abuse Erica and that he often saw her mother beat her. She would beat her with a belt if she didn't listen, he said. He added that Sandy would punch Erica on the top of her head. Jamie testified that Erica actually had a bald spot on her head from where wounds had formed and healed from being hit. 12-year-old Sadie, the couple's youngest, said she would try and sneak food to Erica. She said that Erica was locked in the closet in either her mother's bathroom or Brooke's room. She added that on one occasion, Casey had choked Erica to the point that she couldn't breathe. If Erica was given a gift, as soon as whoever had given it to her had gone, her present was given to either her brother Toby or sister Sadie. In a statement read by the district attorney, Sandy had once said that nobody would find Erica, as Casey was smarter than the FBI. The disturbing details just kept coming. In the week before she was last seen, her siblings said that Erica had sunken eyes. She appeared to be gray and weak with open, oozing wounds. Jamie said the last time he saw her she looked like a zombie. She said she didn't feel good and couldn't breathe properly. Jamie said his mother's response was saying, "I don't care. Get back in the F******ing corner." The next day Jamie said his parents weren't home when he woke up, and they didn't come home till later in the day. He said when they got back, Sandy was quiet and looked like he was about to throw up, whereas Casey looked normal. When he asked where his sister was, they said she was at her grandmother's. Prosecutor Anand Ramaswamy spoke of Jamie's testimony and then said, "Erica is no longer alive. There is an agreement between Casey Parsons and her husband to not report the death." Sandy's lawyer hit back saying that bad parenting didn't equate to criminal conduct. "A lot of this relies on the testimony of Jamie Parsons," the lawyer said. Jamie explained that he had spoken to his maternal grandmother Shirley in February 2013, saying he hadn't seen Erica for a while. It would be 5 months before the missing persons report was filed by him. This strange case continued to get more confusing, as Sandy's brother Scott would tell investigators that Jamie was a compulsive liar. Shirley, Casey's mother, said the last time she saw Erica was around the holidays in 2011. She said that when Erica was 6 years old, she had seen bruises on her bottom and a black eye. She said that Casey had blamed it on Jamie. She said that she and her husband James had wondered if Casey was being abusive but brushed it off. In a statement she said she had once seen Erica be choked by Casey. James then grabbed her arm and, quote, fussed at their daughter before they became upset and soon left. She also noted that Erica's hands showed signs of injuries, backing what Jamie had said about his mother bending Erica's fingers back to stop her from getting out of line. Robin also observed Erica's crooked fingers and suspected that they may have been broken. Casey said that it was arthritis. Robin testified that Casey had beaten Erica often and forced her to stand in a corner, and pictures were shown as evidence of this, documenting her standing in the corner on 5 separate occasions. This heartbreaking picture continued to get worse. When Erica was younger, she had called Casey and Sandy mom and dad, but Casey told her she didn't like it and to never call her mom again. Erica was told to call them Casey and Sandy. Janet, Sandy's stepmother, spoke about a time when the family went on a beach vacation. Erica was left behind. She said that Erica had been told not to tell anybody she was there and that she had to hide. William, Janet's husband and Sandy's father, found Erica at home by herself. "I always thought Erica was not treated as kindly as the others," Janet said. Although this trial was not about Erica's disappearance, it was about the fraud charges. All of this evidence was painting a dark and damning picture, and yet more witnesses would come forward to testify about this. In 2000, a woman called Amy Miller and her husband had hired Casey to act as a surrogate for her, having met her through a surrogacy website. "She just seemed like the perfect person to carry our baby. She just seemed very wholesome, very down to earth, very religious. The fact that she adopted Erica to keep her in the family, I thought that was that was admirable is what I thought." She added that Casey often spoke of Erica. They agreed to pay Casey $10,000 in monthly installments. payments that Casey said should be donated to her church as a charitable contribution. But Casey also said that she needed a washer and a dryer, so the first payment and subsequent ones went to her. Casey later told Amy that the baby she had been carrying had died. She changed her phone number. She changed her email. She told me I needed to get a life. I had no business having a child. Casey hadn't lost the baby. The baby was born safe and well. The Parsons tried to sell the baby to Robin for $10,000, saying that the Millers no longer wanted the baby. Robin went online and found Amy, who subsequently got law enforcement involved and was able to get their child back. She went from a loving, kind woman to a terrible, vicious person. Amy said, "I just know how manipulating they are. I know what they put my family through, which was just pure hell." Casey would later plead guilty to 5 counts of mail fraud, 1 count of aggravated identity theft, 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the government, 4 counts of wire fraud, and 4 counts of aiding in the preparation of a false tax return. She received a sentence of 120 months in prison, 3 years supervised release, $41,814 in restitution, and a special assessment of $1,500. Sandy was later found guilty of 20 counts of theft of government funds, 20 counts of mail fraud, 1 count of aggravated ID theft, 1 count of false statement given to the government agency, and 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the government. The jury had deliberated for less than 5 hours to find him guilty of 43 counts. He was sentenced to 96 months in prison, 3 years supervised release, $14,062 in restitution, and a special assessment of $4,300. Given everything that had come out during the trial, especially about what Erica had been through, the judge made it clear in the sentencing remarks that the evidence to suggest that Erica was no longer alive was overwhelming. He also said that he would accept almost all of the statements and testimony about the abuse Erica had suffered, saying that what family members had said was credible. He also said he found what witnesses from the government institutions had said was also credible and honest, and that the nature of the offenses is sinister. He said that the story Erica was with this mystery Nan was a poorly concocted, deliberate falsehood. He said that Erica was a defenseless little girl who only wanted to be loved. "I have sentenced thousands of people over the years," he told the couple, "but no case I've ever had is as disturbing as this one." After being sentenced for the fraud charges, Casey's sister Robin told WBTV, "I mean, not complete justice. I think she deserves more." After the sentencing was finished, Casey's mom Shirley said that she didn't think that the testimony relating to Erica should have been allowed to play a part during the sentencing. Not until there was some kind of proof that something happened to Erica besides Jamie, she said. Jamie would later recant his allegations of abuse, saying that whilst he was worried about his sister, he hadn't actually witnessed anything happening to Erica. This was another strange turn in an even stranger case. Sandy would later appeal to get his sentence reduced, but the U.S. Supreme Court denied it, and Casey also filed an appeal against her sentence, which the Fourth Circuit dismissed. Those searching for Erica were not going to give up. 2 local residents, Shannon Moss and Wanda Rogers, contacted Canine Specialties, run by a man in Illinois who used dogs to search for the missing. "We don't want people to forget she's still missing. She's not been found. We've got to find her. Whatever we got to do, we've got to come together in Rowan County and find her," Wanda said. "I didn't know her, but I do now. So it's personal. She's got to be found. She's a human being. If something really bad happened to her, she's been thrown away like a piece of trash, and she's not a piece of trash. She's a little girl. She deserves to be found. And I'm not giving up." Robert T. Larson headed to Rowan County and organized various searches with his dogs. "These people have come together and put every ounce of energy they have into this weekend to try and find Erica. If I was going to work with anybody, it would be these people," he said. The searches were not part of the law enforcement efforts, but they were notified that the searches would be carried out. Sadly, nothing would be found. "We don't just look for a dead Erica, we look for an alive Erica too. We are not giving up. We check everything we can," Wanda emphasized. The Rowan County Sheriff's Office got in touch with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and requested an age-progressed image of Erica, which was soon released, hoping it would spark a memory in someone who may have seen her recently, if by the slimmest of chances she was still alive. It had now been 5 years since Erica was reported missing. May 2016. Brooke, Casey, and Sandy's oldest daughter agreed to talk to the FBI. She had, up until that point, been backing her parents. What she had to say was truly sickening. She said that on one occasion, her mother had forced Erica to stand outside on a hot day with no shoes until her feet had blistered. She said that her skin didn't look normal and she had open wounds all over her body. A few months later, Brooke visited her dad in prison, and finally there would be a break in the case that investigators had been searching for. Sandy said he would help the police find Erica. On the 27th of September, 2016, Rowan County Sheriff Kevin Orton said that following a dialogue with Sandy, they had been able to find what they were looking for. He said that Casey had told him that on the 17th of December 2011, Erica had taken her own life. He said that they had poured bleach on her body to mask the smell, before putting her body into plastic bags and a storage tote. Later that day, they went to a holiday party. The next day, December 18th, Sandy said the couple went to Pageland, South Carolina, where he began to dig a hole. They took her remains out of the storage container. Casey removed her clothes, and little Erica was buried in a shallow grave. He said they discarded the tote and her clothes. He said that his wife had told him to let her handle the Nan story. Sandy pointed at a part of forest ground. It was here, buried in a shallow grave. The remains of Erica Parsons were finally found. That day in South Carolina was tough on all of us, Sheriff Orton said. I saw some pretty tough cops take it pretty rough. The guards that were with him took him into the woods, and within a minute they were coming back out, and he was crying when he came back out, County Sheriff Jay Brooks said. Erica's family visited the site and many broke down in tears. Teresa Goodman, Erica's aunt, said that officials had struck a deal with Sandy and that she and a private investigator had searched the area before but had not found anything. I'm grateful that the family that did care about her has some sort of closure. The sheriff of Rowan County certainly deserves all the credit in the world. They've worked thousands and thousands of man-hours on this case, Sheriff Brooks said. It can't help but make you really step back and think. As soon as you get through here, call your kids, he added. In December 2016, Detective Chad Moose was contacted by none other than Casey Parsons. She had something she wanted to tell him. She said that Erica had said she had wanted to die, and then she later found her lying on the living room floor on a comforter. She said she rolled her over, but Erica didn't move. She said Erica had taken her own life. This story would later have different versions of exactly how Erica had allegedly taken her own life. She explained that they put her remains into the tote and Sandy told her to pour bleach over the body. Debit card records for Casey showed that the bleach had been purchased in a Walmart on the 5th of December. She also admitted to bending Erica's fingers back but denied breaking them. It would be a couple of years before she would later admit that some of Erica's fingers may have been broken. She admitted to beating Erica with a belt buckle. She said she was too scared to take Erica to get medical attention because she was worried her sister Robin would get social services involved. On the 25th of February 2017, at the First Baptist Church, family, strangers, and police arrived for Erica's funeral service. The day before would have been her birthday. Nearly a year after her remains were released, the findings of the autopsy were made public. Sheriff Orton had previously said that they were going to wait for the results of the autopsy before charges were filed. And when the results came back, they painted a grim and devastating picture. The autopsy said that she had died as a result of homicidal violence of undetermined means. It revealed she had fractures in various stages of the healing process in her upper right arm, the bone connecting the arm to the collarbone, a finger, her jaw, her nose, the left shin bone, and 7 ribs, some of which had been broken more than once. She had signs of spina bifida occulta. She was malnourished. It was suggested she had low bone density and a growth deficit. One of her teeth was missing, and there were signs that some of her teeth had been broken. It was also possible she was suffering from renal failure, an untreated sepsis or infection, or even poisoning. Given the history of physical abuse and the signs of physical abuse present at autopsy, we cannot exclude the possibility of a terminal blunt force injury, suffocation, or strangulation, a medical examiner wrote in the report. She had also been dismembered. Whilst Carolyn said that she was thankful Erica had finally been found after Sandy had revealed where she was, it didn't mean that he bore no guilt or that he was absolved. He stood behind her and supported every lie that came out of her mouth, Carolyn said. Both Sandy and Casey Parsons were charged with first-degree murder, felony child abuse inflicting serious injury, felony concealment of death, and felony obstruction of justice. According to the indictment, Casey and Sandy did knowingly and willfully dismember and destroy human remains of Erica Lynn Parsons by any means including removing body parts and otherwise obliterating any portion thereof. As Sheriff Orton said, "It weighed on everybody. I've been here 30 years and some of my investigators have been here a long time, and we felt like if we did not find her and get these folks charged eventually, then we were failures in our whole career. This case has weighed on us pretty heavy. We're very proud to be where we are today," Sheriff Orton said. "It's a difficult case. At times we had a lot of hope we'd find Erica. Then we'd have hope we'd find her remains, and now we're just ready to move on with the prosecution. It's been a long time coming. We wanted to make sure the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed," he added. He said he was pleased that the charges were in time for what would have been Erica's 20th birthday. Carolyn said she initially wanted them to face capital punishment, but then changed her mind. She wanted them to live out every day of the rest of their lives in prison. She added that she thought they were evil and called them monsters. On the 2nd of August 2019, Casey Parsons entered a plea of guilty to child abuse and murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. She also received consecutive sentences for charges of felony concealment of death, felony child abuse inflicting serious bodily harm, and felony obstruction of justice. These sentences were a combined total of 23 years. For months after Casey entered her plea, Sandy would also plead guilty to obstruction of justice, child abuse, concealment of death, and second-degree murder. For his role in Erica's death, Sandy was sentenced to a minimum of 33 years in prison. He will be 82 years old by the time he is first eligible for parole. Sandy's lawyer read letters from the youngest children where they talked about how much they loved their father and missed him, adding that he never abused them. Psychologist Dr. Claudia Coleman evaluated Sandy twice, and she also testified at the hearing. She said he was passive and had trouble making decisions by himself, adding that Casey had been the dominant one in the relationship and that she had threatened to remove the children from him if he didn't do as she told him. She said that in her opinion, Sandy hadn't wanted Erica to die and had expressed remorse. Sandy had told Dr. Coleman he wasn't aware of the extent of the abuse that Erica was suffering, but the district attorney said he was able to see the extent of the abuse and had exacted some of it. The DA emphasized that Sandy was an adult in that home, adding that he wasn't a victim or a hero and deserved the maximum sentence possible. Carolyn said that Sandy's sentence felt like a slap on the wrist and that he had been able to make his own choices. She also said that Casey's family members could have said something when they saw the signs of abuse. The judge put Sandy in the same category as his wife, saying that although he believed her to be the brains behind the plan, Sandy had gone along with it and participated in it, adding that he had a twisted mind. While in prison, Sandy has received 2 infractions, one for possessing non-threatening contraband and one for possession of a weapon. Finally, after the involvement of so many law enforcement officers across various agencies, thousands upon thousands of man-hours, extensive searches, hundreds of witness interviews, the case of Erica Parsons was finally closed. The dedication and the commitment shown by those investigating was absolutely incredible. It was never about the Rowan County Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the SPI, no individual except Erica, Sheriff Orton said. Those involved knew that as frustrating as it was, they needed to take their time and build their case brick by brick so that it had the most solid of foundations. The monsters who abuse and mistreat children are amongst the worst in society. There are few things more cruel than having the love and trust of a child and making that child feel unwanted, unloved, and unsafe. Knowing how much Erica suffered in such a short life, not even knowing the warmth of having her own bed, and knowing that this happened at the hands of those who were charged with protecting and looking after her is just too sad to think about. Perhaps the only positive thing to come from this is that those monsters responsible, in this case, are exactly where they belong. I gave up Erica for what I thought would be a better life. I didn't have a steady home. I didn't have a steady job, said Carolyn. She referred to Erica as a gift that millions of people would love to receive. I just want to know why, and I never will. To hear those charges and look them in the face and to know that I trusted them to raise my child better than I thought I could. That hurts. Sarah Louise Yarborough was born on June 12, 1975 to Tom and Laura Yarborough in Portland, Oregon. At some point, her family would move to Federal Way, Washington, near her grandparents. As a sophomore, Sarah was an honors student and a member of the drill team. She loved art, ballet, and her friends. She was an excellent student who had already been to New Zealand twice for an educational outreach program. She was known to always have a book in her hand and was looking forward to college. On the morning of Saturday, December 14, 1991, tragedy would strike and her life would sadly be taken away by a monster. Sarah and her drill team were meeting up first thing in the morning at school to get on a bus that would take them to an event where they were supposed to perform. Sarah thought bus time was 8 to 8.30, but it was actually 9 to 9.30. So when she pulled into the school's back parking lot at 8:15 a.m., she was 45 minutes early. No one else was in the lot at the time, but there were a lot of people at the high school for various activities. At some point after she arrived, a jogger passing on a trail near the sports field noticed a man and a woman lying in the tall grass nearby. The jogger assumed it was a couple making out and continued jogging. He would pass them once more, but again, kept to his own business and jogged back to the parking lot. Minutes later, two 12-year-old boys were approaching the area and saw a man walking towards them out of the brush. When he looked up and noticed the boys, he quickly turned away from them and went another direction. They thought the guy was acting strange and continued walking in that direction and would eventually discover Sarah's body. They panicked and ran home to tell their parents. One of the boys' dads went to search for the Chevy Nova the kids said they thought the killer drove away in. The dad stopped at a nearby store parking lot and told someone to call police. Once he got back out to his car, he'd completely lost track of the Chevy. It was determined that she had been fatally attacked, but they were able to preserve DNA from the killer. When word began to spread about what had happened, tips began to pour in. The jogger and the boys described the man they saw as a white man in his 20s, about 6 foot tall, with shoulder-length blonde hair. He was wearing a dark trench coat and dark pants. When the Chevy Nova was tracked down and ended up being a guy that had pulled into the parking lot to eat breakfast. Even after his explanation, he was still investigated, but DNA would eventually rule him out. There were so many tips filing in to police that they were having a hard time keeping up, and it was actually slowing them down. So Sarah's grandfather, John Holmquist, a scientist at Weyerhaeuser Company, got permission from his employment to loan the police department a $150,000 computer to help them collect, organize, and analyze all the tips law enforcement was receiving. Sarah would have graduated with her class in June of 1993. Her class raised $40,000 and a local sculptor created a bench dedicated to her. The bench was placed in front of Federal Way High School just 3 days before her class graduated. A replica of her belongings and of her beloved dog stands on the ground with his front paws up on the bench as if sniffing out Sarah's scent from her possessions. In 2011, the detective on the case reached out to genealogy research company Identifinders International. He asked them if they could perform a genealogy report on the suspect's DNA. Despite forensic genetic genealogy just beginning to grow, Colleen Fitzpatrick was still able to come to the conclusion that Sarah's killer was one of the descendants of Robert Fuller, who came from England to America on the Mayflower in 1638 at the age of 23. The investigator took this information and began to look for people with the surname Fuller in and around King County in 1991. He found a few Fullers and brought some pictures of them to the child witnesses from 20 years ago. But the boys who were over 30 by then didn't recognize any of the men from that morning in 1991. The investigator interviewed a few of the Fuller men in the area anyway and asked for their DNA samples, in which they agreed to provide. These samples were sent to the state crime lab and compared to the suspect's DNA. None of them were an exact match, but one man was actually determined to be a distant relative of the suspect. They shared enough DNA to be genetically linked on their father's sides. Fitzpatrick of Identifinders International knew they were cousins in some way, but didn't know how distant of cousins they were. After that, because of the limits in the field at the time, Identifinder's involvement in the case ended. Amazingly, this case helped in the development of forensic genetic genealogy as we know it today. In 2017, the detective reached out again to Identifinders and they agreed to work further on the case using advancements that occurred over the past several years. After 27 years of police investigating thousands of tips and leads and swabbing 200 to 300 possible suspects, they finally had a possible match. On September 27, 2019, Fitzpatrick called the detective with names to look into as a possible owner of the DNA found on Sarah's clothes almost 28 years ago. They had zeroed in on two brothers, one born in 1958 and one born in 1964. Despite the older brother being a registered sex offender who had served time, his DNA was in Cody's and had never matched as a hit, so he was ruled out. The younger brother also had a history of sex-related crimes and lived in and around King County when Sarah was killed. Police began surveilling him and soon followed him to the laundromat Lake Meridian Cleaners near his home in Kent, Washington. While his clothes were laundering, he stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. Once done, he threw it on the ground and detectives confiscated the cigarette as evidence. But they decided to stay longer and was able to snatch another cigarette and a napkin that fell out of his pocket that he didn't bother picking up. During the surveillance at the laundromat, one of the detectives approached the suspect and asked him for directions. He learned that he goes by Leon, which is actually the suspect's middle name, not his first name. The evidence was sent to the crime lab for testing and a match was made. The next day, October 3, 2019, the King County Sheriff's Department announced the arrest of Patrick Leon Nicholas for the 1991 murder of 16-year-old Sarah Yarborough. Nicholas was born in 1964 and at the time of his arrest, he was living in Covington, Washington, just 12 miles from Federal Way High School. He had never been investigated in the murder case. One night in 1983, he had kidnapped a girl in her own car, and when he tried to get her out of the car, she was able to escape by jumping in the river and swimming downstream. Nicholas then bought a plane ticket and flew out of state, but police caught him and he served 3 or 4 years behind bars. Then in 1994, he pleaded guilty to a gross misdemeanor assault in the 4th degree of a minor. Washington State had instituted a policy to collect DNA from its criminal offenders in 1990, but the gross misdemeanor conviction was not a high enough charge that would require him to submit his DNA. This may be why he pleaded guilty to avoid risking a higher charge and having his DNA placed into Cody's. Since his biological grandfather had been adopted, it had made the genetic genealogy harder to navigate. He was arrested and given a $5 million bail, but pleaded not guilty to the murder. Thankfully, Sarah's family finally has some closure. On May 25, 2003, a hiker's dog discovered a skull on a slope 1,000 feet above the ski resort Mammoth Lakes in California. Days later, more remains were found at the top of a ridge called Mammoth Knolls near Shady Rest Park. The San Francisco Medical Examiner's Office determined that the victim had been killed around the fall of 2002, less than a year earlier. Was later determined to be the remains of a female between the ages of 30 and 40 years old. Her teeth were in poor condition and she had likely received little to no dental care during her life. It was also discovered that she had given birth at least once in her life. For the first time in criminal investigation history, forensic isotope testing was performed on the remains in a Canadian lab to estimate the locations where the victim spent time in based on the water she drank. This paired with the DNA testing revealed that she was likely born and raised as a child in Southern California or Northern Mexico and had later moved to Southern Mexico or Oaxaca where she lived for about a decade. Her diet was described as very poor and she had consumed a significant amount of corn. Unable to determine her identity, she became known as Mammoth Lakes Jane Doe. Detective Paul Dostie of the Mammoth Lakes Police Department led the investigation. He contacted Dr. Philip Walker, a physical anthropologist at the UCSB and an expert in prehistoric Native Americans to help him on the case. Dr. Walker believed that the San Francisco Medical Examiner had performed an inadequate autopsy because there was no official cause of death. It's presumed that snow covering the burial site prevented an earlier discovery. Mitochondrial DNA testing was performed of the victim, which showed that she was of Zapotec Indian descent from the Oaxaca village. Investigators traveled to this location twice, looking for answers to her identity, but were unsuccessful. However, days after the discovery, a park ranger working at the Mammoth Lakes Visitor Center came forward to state that he recalled a woman who had visited the area in the fall of 2002 with a man, possibly her husband. He said she was a very petite woman, possibly Asian, and she appeared afraid of the man she was with, who was heavyset and had a bushy mustache. At one point, she had told a park ranger that he was abusive towards her and wouldn't let her go. She was then given a Wild Iris Domestic Violence Services card. Her husband asked questions about the regulations of the campground and how long visitors were allowed to stay. He was described as abrasive and mean-spirited. From the descriptions, they were able to create composite sketches of the couple. The victim's face was reconstructed by Betty Pat Gatliff, a noted Oklahoma forensic artist who specializes in 3D facial reconstructions. The photograph was printed on flyers that were distributed throughout the Oaxaca community in Los Angeles. Also, Ray Morales, president of the Oaxacan Businessmen's Association, distributed the flyers in the area. In 2006, the woman on the flyer was falsely identified as Barbara Pacheco Santiago by her stepmother who had not seen her for over 7 years. Santiago's biological parents have been dead for many years, and her stepmother said Pacheco Santiago had 2 sons, neither of whom have been located. It would be years before this false identification was corrected. 18 years later, on August 31, 2021, using DNA advancement, her identity was finally determined to be 30-year-old Isabel Sanchez Bernal. Her suspected killer was also announced as Diego Santiago Hernandez Antonia, and he was arrested for her murder. Isabel was from Pueblo, Mexico, but had been living in California for about 2 years prior to her death. Hernandez Antonia is a local from the town of Mammoth Lakes where Isabel's body was found. It is unclear what his relationship was to her, and police are asking anyone who knows the couple to come forward. But as of now, Isabel has her name back and her killer remains behind bars. In January 2022, it was announced that police in Colorado had solved the murders of 3 women and a teenage girl by using familial DNA and genetic genealogy. The victims were 53-year-old Dolores Brajas, 33-year-old Madeline Livaday, 27-year-old Gwendolyn Harris, and 17-year-old Antoinette Parks, and were all killed between 1978 and 1981 in the Denver, Colorado area. Initially, investigators were working on each cold case separately, but between 2013 and 2018, these 4 cases were linked together by DNA evidence. They were all linked to one possible suspect, Joe Michael Irvin. In 2019, the Denver Police Crime Laboratory learned of an ancestry link in Texas to the suspect. The link was discovered while doing a search in Texas records for biological relatives of the killer's DNA profile. Then in 2021, authorities exhumed Irvin's body from an Arlington cemetery and used DNA to confirm he had in fact killed the 4 females. The killing stopped in June of 1981 when Deborah Sue Core, an Aurora police officer, pulled Irvin over in a traffic stop in what was the first line of duty death for the Aurora Police Department. He also wounded bystander Glenn Spies when Spies witnessed the incident and tried to intervene. He would take his own life 4 days later while in custody for her murder. Irvin's criminal history began in October of 1969 when he was indicted for the August 8, 1969 murder of 21-year-old Rodney Jean Bonham at the since-demolished Barry Bowl off East Berry Street in Fort Worth, Texas. Colorado police did not connect Irvin to the Texas arrest warrant because his birth year had been entered incorrectly into NCIC, and also because he had adopted the surname Irwing instead of Irvin after fleeing to Colorado. Those mistakes would cost the lives of multiple women. Dolores Barajas was killed when she was a 53-year-old wife, mother, and grandmother. She was fatally attacked while walking to work. She was visiting family in Denver that summer and working at a hotel downtown. The Sunday she was killed was supposed to be her last day of work before she returned home. On August 10, 1980, after her death, her body was found lying in the street on the 500 block of East 17th Avenue. Police have not released a photo of Dolores at her family's request. In January of 1981, Irvin allegedly killed a 17-year-old girl named Antoinette Parks. On January 24th, 1981, Adams County deputies found her body in a field near 64th Avenue and Broadway. She had also been fatally attacked. She loved music and her family described her as caring, determined, and loved children. Madeline Livaday grew up in Central Florida, one of 5 sisters, and was an avid swimmer. She attended high school in Florida and graduated from Tulane University. Prior to getting married, she led an adventurous life traveling to Africa and Europe as part of her work as an editor on the beloved children's magazine, Ranger Rick. Madeline was the first victim killed on December 7, 1978, when she was a 33-year-old mother of 2. An unknown man came to her door on Poplar Street in Denver while she was cooking breakfast for her children and fatally attacked her. Gwendolyn Harris was found fatally attacked when she was a 27-year-old mother. She was last seen at a lounge in downtown Denver about a block away from Irvin's residence. Her family described her as a bright, soft-spoken, and athletic woman. On December 21, 1980, after her death, her body was found near East 47th Avenue and Andrews Drive in Denver's Montbello neighborhood. Madeline's daughters and the brothers of Antoinette were present for the announcement in early 2022 and spoke to reporters. They said they were experiencing a roller coaster of emotions after finding out who killed their family member, but were thankful for finally having some closure. On the fateful day of August 2, 2015, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office was inundated with a barrage of urgent 911 calls, each detailing a singularly horrific occurrence. The perpetrator of this dreadful act was revealed to be Michael Slager, a 41-year-old man, while the victim, enduring this unimaginable ordeal, was his 31-year-old girlfriend, Judy Malinowski. Yet the unfolding years would give rise to an extraordinary narrative, as Judy defied all expectations to become the first individual in history to provide testimony in her own homicide case. What were the deeper motivations that led to this tragic event, and how did this case irrevocably alter the legal framework? Judith Ann Hensel, known to the world as Judy Malinowski, graced the earth on August 26, 1982 in Columbus, Ohio, born to the loving embrace of Bonnie and Thomas Hensel. As the cherished firstborn, Judy was a beacon of hope for her parents, arriving after a series of heartfelt attempts. Throughout her formative years, she blossomed into her mother's dearest confidant. Beyond her role as a devoted daughter, Judy also embraced the responsibilities of a nurturing elder sister to her younger siblings. She completed her secondary education at New Albany High School, graduating in 2001, where her charm and grace earned her the titles of Miss New Albany and Homecoming Queen. Following her high school achievements, embarked on her collegiate journey at Ohio State University, where her magnetic personality shone brightly. However, her life took a tumultuous turn when she faced a diagnosis of ovarian cancer at a tender age, a battle she valiantly overcame. A free spirit at heart, Judy participated in numerous beauty pageants, yet she yearned for a life of simplicity, a dream she nearly realized. At just 22, she entered into matrimony with Ron Malinowski, and while the details of their union remained somewhat elusive, their family soon flourished. In March 2004, she celebrated the arrival of her first daughter, Kay Malinowski, followed by the birth of another daughter, Madison Malinowski, in September 2007, deepening her love for her children. However, the tides of life shifted dramatically when Judy discovered her husband's infidelity, leading to their separation at the close of 2007. This tumultuous period coincided with the return of her cancer, necessitating a total hysterectomy. Yet, with unwavering resilience, Judy once again emerged victorious in her battle against cancer. Nevertheless, her journey was far from over, as further challenges awaited her. In the late 2000s, America experienced a dramatic increase in the prescription of opioid medications, resulting in numerous tales of addiction. Among those affected was Judy. As she navigated her recovery journey, she found herself developing a reliance on painkillers. Despite the unwavering support from her family, her circumstances continued to worsen. When her insurance ceased to cover her medications, she sought solace in illicit substances, particularly heroin. The consequences were dire, her health deteriorated, and her relationships with her family and daughters suffered immensely. However, as time passed, recognized that her reckless decisions were having a profound effect on her daughters. This realization propelled her to take a crucial step by enrolling in the esteemed Parkside Rehab Center in Ohio. In a remarkably short time, she achieved sobriety, secured her own apartment, and stabilized her finances. Life was finally beginning to smile upon this young mother. In 2014, through the realm of social media, Judy reconnected with Michael Slager, an acquaintance from her ex-husband's social circle. Known as Mike to many, he reached out to Judy via a Facebook message, confessing that he had harbored feelings for her, but had refrained from expressing them during her marriage. Their connection blossomed into a romantic relationship by April 2015. Initially, Judy's mother Bonnie voiced her disapproval of their union, expressing concerns about the safety of Judy's daughters around Michael. Regrettably, neither Judy nor her family were aware of Michael Slager's troubling criminal history at that time, which included charges of theft, battery, stalking, domestic violence, burglary, assault, and even child endangerment. He was a perilous individual, and it wasn't long before his true nature emerged. Just a few months into their relationship, Michael began exhibiting possessive and abusive behavior. In her struggle to cope, Judy found herself slipping back into the clutches of drug use. In a startling turn of events, it was Michael who now supplied Judy with drugs, despite his own abstinence from their use. Her family suspected this was a calculated move by Michael to assert dominance over her. As long as Judy remained dependent on drugs, she would inevitably return to him, ensnared in a relentless cycle of addiction. There were moments when Michael's aggression escalated to the point of choking Judy, instilling a deep-seated fear for her life. She confided in her loved ones, expressing her genuine dread that Michael might end her life should she attempt to escape. He even went so far as to manipulate Judy's mother against her. Michael's abuse was not limited to physical violence. He regularly issued threats against her life. The situation deteriorated to such an extent that law enforcement had to intervene on numerous occasions. While Michael frequently initiated these calls, there were instances when Judy herself reached out for help. Yet, despite nearly a dozen reports of domestic violence at their residence, no legal action was ever taken. Judy made several attempts to sever ties with Michael, reflecting the all-too-familiar struggle of abuse victims trying to break free. Unfortunately, she found herself repeatedly drawn back to him. Judy's mother had warned Michael to stay away from her daughter, yet he persisted in residing in her home. Even when Judy sought help from the authorities, her past with drugs seemed to undermine her credibility. Tragically, Michael capitalized on this weakness, asserting that the police were aligned with him. This was yet another manipulation, a strategy to tighten his grip on Judy. For her, the only feasible escape from both the drugs and Michael lay in rehabilitation. Ultimately, in August 2015, Judy was accepted into a drug rehab program, and Parkside Rehab notified her of an available bed. Michael offered to drive her there, leading to the fateful day of Sunday, August 2, 2015, when he transported Judy to the rehabilitation center. Yet, Judy found herself unprepared to embark on her rehabilitation journey just yet. She yearned for a moment of connection with her family, to articulate her circumstances, and to share a final heartfelt exchange with her children before entering the rehab facility. Additionally, she planned to procure cigarettes prior to her arrival, as smoking was permitted within the center's confines. Consequently, they chose to momentarily leave the facility, intending to return later. During their return, they paused at the Speedway gas station located at 376 Alger Road in Gahanna, Ohio. This detour also provided Judy with a respite from the ongoing dispute with Michael that had marred their journey. Unbeknownst to her, her life was teetering on the brink of a catastrophic event. Surveillance cameras positioned at 2 nearby ATMs recorded the moment Judy and Michael's truck halted behind the gas station. The couple was embroiled in a fierce argument, which continued even after they exited the vehicle. In a fit of frustration, Judy hurled her soda at Michael, provoking a terrifying response. Michael retreated to his vehicle, retrieved a red gasoline container, and returned to Judy, dousing her with gasoline. As Judy attempted to distance herself from him, she stumbled on the grass, struggling to comprehend the unfolding chaos. In a matter of moments, leaned down and ignited her with a lighter. The horrifying scene captured on camera depicted Judy fighting for her life as flames consumed her. Despite her desperate cries for assistance, Michael stood by, coldly observing her agony. Only a true monster could exhibit such indifference. He finally grabbed a fire extinguisher only after noticing bystanders rushing to help, injuring himself in the process. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office received numerous distress calls from the gas station, all detailing the harrowing incident. Both Judy and Michael were rushed to the Ohio State University's Wexner Medical Center for urgent care, and Judy's family was swiftly informed. At that moment, they were utterly unaware of the events that had unfolded. All they could do was speculate that an accident had taken place. When Bonnie, Judy's mother, stepped into her daughter's sanctuary, she was met with a sight that no one could ever be prepared for. A staggering 95% of Judy's body bore the marks of 3rd and 4th degree burns. Her skin transformed into a grotesque canvas, unrecognizable and ravaged by the ferocity of the flames. The horror was so profound that Judy's sister, Danielle, was overwhelmed and succumbed to nausea. The anguished mother turned to the medical staff, desperately searching for a flicker of hope, but none was to be found. With the severity of her injuries and her tender rage, Judy was not expected to survive beyond a few hours. The doctors grimly assessed her situation, declaring a chilling 110% mortality rate, a stark truth that typically meant patients lingered for only a few days. As Judy fought valiantly for her life, detectives were resolute in their quest to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. At that point, they had pieced together a coherent narrative of the events leading up to the incident. They had access to the 911 call recordings made by witnesses and had secured surveillance footage from the 2 ATMs situated across the street from the gas station. However, the motive remained elusive, known only to one individual, the orchestrator of this horrific act, now confined to a hospital bed alongside his victim. Detective Chad Cohagen, leading the investigation for the Gahanna Police Department, entered Michael's room to conduct an interrogation. Before Michael could utter a denial, Detective Cohagen revealed that they possessed ample evidence against him. From the outset, the detective sensed that Michael's account was riddled with inconsistencies. It was illogical for someone to be so consumed by rage as to douse another in gasoline, only to display an unsettling calm moments later while offering to light a cigarette. Nevertheless, they were determined to corroborate his story. Judy was momentarily roused from her sedation to engage with the detectives, a decision fraught with risk, yet deemed essential. The detective team harbored grave concerns that Judy might succumb without revealing critical information, potentially granting Michael an unwarranted advantage in legal proceedings. An additional layer of uncertainty loomed. Would Judy possess the ability to hear and respond to voices in her fragile state? It was nothing short of miraculous that she not only clung to life but also demonstrated responsiveness despite the severe trauma she had endured. Upon receiving news of Michael's arrest, Bonnie found herself grappling with disbelief. She pondered whether Judy had been in a disoriented state during her conversation with the detectives. The idea that someone could intentionally inflict such harm upon another, particularly someone who professed love, was utterly unfathomable to her. Thus, she resolved to scrutinize the surveillance footage herself. As the months unfolded, Judy remained ensconced in a coma for a staggering 8 months. She was placed on life support multiple times, each instance showcasing her remarkable tenacity to survive. Her journey became a relentless contest between life and death, a struggle that defied all odds. Meanwhile, Michael Slager awaited his uncertain fate in jail, counting the days with bated breath. Should Judy succumb, the prosecutors would have grounds to pursue murder charges against him. Then, after 8 long months, the detectives received an astonishing call. Judy Malinowski had awakened after enduring 59 surgeries and months of rigorous treatment. Her transformation was profound. She had lost all her hair, both ears and several fingers. Some of her wounds remained open, unable to be treated due to her frail condition. Lying on her stomach, Her severely burned skin was adorned with ointments and dressings. Despite the excruciating pain that accompanied every breath, she persevered, a testament to her indomitable spirit. Medical experts labeled it a miracle, and with that miracle Judy was fervently seeking justice. After enduring months of confinement, Michael Slager faced charges of aggravated arson and felonious assault. He persistently denied any intention to harm Judy, prompting the prosecution to prepare for a jury trial. Despite her immense suffering, Judy was resolute in her desire to testify against him, eager to share her narrative. However, his defense attorney, Bob Crapins, cautioned Michael that Judy's testimony could spell disaster for him. Although the prosecution's bluff hinged on uncertainty regarding Judy's health and her ability to testify, Michael succumbed to the pressure. He opted for a no-contest plea, thereby sidestepping a trial and preventing Judy from taking the stand. The defense deemed it essential to exclude her testimony from any potential future murder trial. By pleading no contest, Michael evaded a direct admission of guilt, yet he also refrained from proclaiming his innocence. Judy found no solace in this resolution. It felt as though Michael had once again stifled her voice. Judge Julie Lynch empathized with her plight, but was bound by the limitations of Ohio's legal framework, which allowed for no harsher sentence. The most disheartening element was Michael's refusal to accept responsibility for his actions, showing no remorse for the devastation he had wrought upon Judy's life. The prosecution's victory was far from complete, as prosecutor Warren Edwards recognized the need for a more stringent punishment. Yet, amidst this turmoil stood Judy, a survivor who not only triumphed against overwhelming odds, but also prepared to champion the cause of countless other women who had faced similar trials. With her extraordinary resolve, she had transformed the seemingly unattainable into reality. Now she was committed to instigating legal reform, ready to exert every effort to realize that ambition. Surrounded by her loving family, Judy exhibited extraordinary bravery during a grueling 2-year struggle. She not only fought for her own life, but also sought to address the deficiencies within the justice system. Her relentless efforts bore fruit as early as the dawn of 2017, when the Ohio legislature began to finalize the first draft of House Bill 63, affectionately known as Judy's Law. This proposed legislation aimed to increase the maximum penalty for the intentional disfigurement of an individual to a staggering 20 years. Regrettably, this law would not alter the course of her own case. Nevertheless, Judy remained resolute in her mission to impact the lives of others positively. From her hospital bed, she delivered a poignant message via videotape, passionately advocating for the law's enactment. As her video played before the lawmakers at the Ohio State House, her courageous 13-year-old daughter Kay eloquently represented her mother's voice. Following a unanimous 30-0 vote in the House, Judy's Law advanced to the Senate. While this was a significant milestone, prosecutors faced a daunting challenge. Judy's health was deteriorating, and should she pass away, Michael could potentially be charged with murder. The concern loomed that only Michael's testimony would be available, depriving the court of Judy's perspective. In a pivotal moment, they approached Judy about the possibility of testifying in her own potential homicide case, to which she readily agreed. Aware that her remarkable strength might not be enough to overcome her injuries, she recognized the gravity of the situation. It was an unprecedented endeavor. No one had ever testified in their own homicide case in the United States. Yet, history was on the brink of transformation. With the support of Franklin County District Attorney Ron O'Brien, Judy Malinowski successfully secured a motion allowing her to provide a video deposition, which would be admissible as evidence in Michael's forthcoming murder trial. However, another formidable challenge awaited her. To move forward, Judy needed to be gradually weaned off her pain medications to be considered legally competent. Her past struggles with substance abuse added layers of complexity to the situation, yet Judy was resolute in her determination to persevere. She faced weeks of excruciating discomfort as she meticulously reduced her high dosages of pain relief. Though her suffering was intense, her commitment to overcoming it was even more formidable. Michael Slager sought the judge's approval to be present during Judy's deposition. a request that the prosecution viewed as an intimidation tactic, leading the judge to deny it. Only the nurses were allowed in the hospital room during this critical testimony, excluding even Judy's mother. The deposition began with Magistrate Elizabeth Waters administering the oath to Judy Malinowski. Prosecutor Warren Edwards initiated the questioning by asking for Judy's full name and age, then skillfully guided her back to the day of the attack, encouraging her to recount the harrowing events of that day. Judy detailed their stop at a gas station to buy cigarettes, after which Mr. Edwards probed deeper into the specific occurrences that unfolded between them. She vividly described the horrifying moment when Michael committed the irreversible act of igniting her. Edwards aimed to refute Michael's assertion that the incident was merely the result of lighting a cigarette, directly questioning Judy to clarify whether such an event had indeed occurred. In a familiar tactic employed by defense attorneys, Crapin sought to cast doubt on the reliability of Judy's statements. After a brief discussion about Judy's relationship with Michael, he delved into her history of substance abuse, suggesting that the trauma she endured, coupled with her past struggles, might impair her memory of the details. Despite the increasingly severe tone of the interrogation, Judy stood resolute in her account. As the cross-examination progressed, Crapin resorted to a dubious tactic, insinuating that Judy exhibited aggressive behavior while under the influence of substances. This strategy sought to suggest that Judy may have provoked Michael, casting doubt on the intentionality of the crime. The dialogue returned to Judy's recollections, particularly her struggle to remember specific details from that fateful day. Crapin capitalized on this, proposing that her memory had been compromised. Yet the most exasperating inquiry was still to come. At the conclusion of the video deposition, Crapin pressed Judy on why she did not flee during those fleeting 30 seconds when escape was still an option. As the testimony extended over 3 arduous hours, a duration that could easily overwhelm anyone in her condition, Judy remained steadfast, unwavering in her resolve. She felt a sense of relief when the deposition finally concluded, not from fear but from the fulfillment of sharing her narrative. Unfortunately, this experience took a toll on her health. Her mother, Bonnie, noted that it had set Judy back medically. The limits of human resilience can only stretch so far. While Judy's spirit remained unyielding, her physical state was gradually deteriorating. After nearly 2 years of relentless struggle between life and death, Judy made the heart-wrenching choice to enter hospice care, expressing her desire to find peace in rest. Exhausted from the pain of fighting, she was transferred to a medical facility in June 2017, where treatment ceased. On June 27, 2017, her 696-day battle came to a close. At the tender age of 33, Judy Malinowski passed away with her mother by her side, ultimately succumbing to her injuries. She was laid to rest at the Law Enforcement Memorial Gardens in Columbus, Ohio. Following Judy's death, Michael Slager, who was still serving time for the assault, faced new charges of first-degree murder. Aware of the dire predicament he faced, Michael steadfastly maintained his innocence, resolutely opting to plead not guilty. To Judy's family, this was merely an age-old tactic employed by Michael to evade accountability for his actions. Meanwhile, the state was unequivocal in its pursuit of the death penalty. The defense sought to exclude Judy's deposition from the proceedings, contending that its inclusion infringed upon Michael's right to confront his accuser. However, Judge Guy Reese ruled otherwise, deeming the deposition admissible. Michael's defense attorney recognized the grim reality. Should the case advance to trial, the jury was likely to impose a capital sentence. The odds were decidedly against Michael. Initially, the defense team aimed for a plea deal that would permit him to enter a no-contest plea, thereby avoiding an admission of guilt. Yet the prosecution dismissed this offer, insisting that any negotiation would only be considered if Michael accepted responsibility for his atrocious crime. When prosecutor Ron O'Brien approached Judy's family for their consent, they readily acquiesced, provided that Michael acknowledged his wrongdoing. As they awaited trial, Ohio Governor John Kasich enacted Judy's Law, with Judy's family present at the signing ceremony. In a poignant moment, Kasich allowed Judy's daughters, 13-year-old Kaylin and 10-year-old Madison, to add their marks to his signature. The enactment of this legislation held profound significance for them, symbolizing that their mother's suffering was not in vain. Ultimately, Michael chose to plead guilty to first-degree murder, finally confronting the reality of his actions. On July 5, 2018, he accepted the plea agreement and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in the Ohio Department of Corrections. During the sentencing hearing, a segment of Judy's testimony was played wherein she articulated her wish for him to receive a life sentence. In a striking display of compassion, Judy extended a grace to Michael that he was unable to reciprocate. Although Michael made a fleeting attempt to apologize to Judy's family following the sentencing, the authenticity of his remorse lingered in doubt. In tribute to Judy's legacy, her family founded Judy's Foundation, dedicated to assisting victims and their families affected by domestic violence, substance abuse, and human trafficking. The foundation is fervently working to promote the elevation of Judy's Law to a federal status, striving to amplify its influence and raise awareness on a grander scale. This is the poignant tale of 4-year-old Jessica Gutierrez, hailing from Lexington, South Carolina, who was tragically taken from her slumber in the early hours while her family lay peacefully asleep. The haunting question that lingered was, where was the young girl's body? Who was the enigmatic figure known as the man with the magic hat? On the fateful evening of June 5, 1986, Jessica shared a bedroom with her 2 sisters in their family's mobile home. An unknown assailant or assailants infiltrated their home sometime between 11:30 p.m. and 9 a.m. the following day. It appeared that the intruder had gained entry through the living room window, tampering with the screens and curtains. The abductor then stealthily lifted Jessica from her bed and exited through the front door. It was on the morning of June 6th that her mother stumbled upon the chilling scene and realized her daughter was missing. Jessica's 6-year-old sister, Rebecca, recounted that Jessica had been taken by the man with the magic hat and beard. Tragically, Jessica was never seen again. Now an adult, Rebecca recalls witnessing a man gently lift Jessica from her bed, doing so without rousing her. Overwhelmed by fear, she remained silent until the grim discovery of Jessica's absence the next morning. Just days prior to this heart-wrenching event, their mother, Deborah, had ended her tumultuous relationship with her boyfriend, citing his alcohol issues and possessive nature. Could this ex-boyfriend be the man with the magic hat and beard? Was Jessica's abduction a sinister act of revenge, jealousy, or possessiveness? Such questions surged forth as the police delved into Deborah's account. Initially, Deborah pointed the finger at her ex-boyfriend, alleging he had taken Jessica, yet he maintained his innocence, claiming ignorance of her whereabouts. Despite being interrogated multiple times, he was never charged. Jessica's father was swiftly cleared as a suspect as he resided in California at the time of her abduction. For many years, investigators faced challenges in identifying a suspect, leading the case to remain unsolved for several decades. Despite extensive efforts, both Jessica and her assailant eluded discovery. The case underwent reviews in 2008 and 2015, during which Lexington County Sheriff Jay Kuhn indicated that investigators approached the matter with renewed vigor. The FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team contributed by analyzing reports and interviewing over 125 individuals. Additionally, a poignant video featuring Jessica's mother, Deborah, was shared when the investigation was reopened. Thanks to the diligent work of law enforcement and media attention, along with a fingerprint discovered on Jessica's bedroom window, authorities were able to identify a primary suspect in her abduction. This individual, Thomas Eric McDowell, was a family acquaintance who was 27 years old in 1986 and had a prior conviction for rape in North Carolina. His fingerprint was the sole one found on the window, despite Deborah's routine cleaning. Notably, in 1987, McDowell allegedly confessed to a cellmate about kidnapping a girl in Lexington County and disposing of her body in a landfill, mentioning he wore a tall cowboy hat during the incident. After this information reached law enforcement, McDowell was approached by police, but he only expressed willingness to confess if granted immunity, which was ultimately denied, leading him to remain silent on the matter. In January 2022, McDowell faced charges of murder, kidnapping, and first-degree burglary related to Jessica's case, although authorities have not disclosed extensive details regarding the evidence against him. It was noted that McDowell resided in Lexington County at the time of Jessica's disappearance, and Deborah continued to suspect her former boyfriend's involvement in the case. The former lover of Deborah and McDowell vehemently denied any acquaintance, yet Deborah insists they crossed paths at a social event months prior to Jessica's mysterious disappearance. Despite Jessica's body never being recovered, suspicions of foul play linger due to the peculiar circumstances surrounding her vanishing. McDowell is currently detained without bail at the Wake County Detention Center in Raleigh, awaiting extradition to South Carolina. The presence of legal representation for McDowell remains uncertain. The lingering question persists: where is Jessica's body? Could Deborah's ex-lover be entangled in this enigma? Is McDowell truly the perpetrator? Or is he a pawn in a sinister game orchestrated by the mystery man with the enchanted hat? Was the fingerprint truly his own? Or was it surreptitiously placed on the window by an unknown hand? 29-year-old Ryan grew up in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. A family person through and through, he was very close to his parents, Jay and Lisa, especially his dad. Although his parents divorced when he was young, everyone stayed close. Ryan's stepfather, Peter Carter, quickly became a big part of his life too. Ryan would soon become a protective older brother to his three younger half-sisters, Allison, Elizabeth, and Catherine. As soon as he was old enough, Ryan even changed his middle name to Carter to show his love for his stepfather. He came from a family of hard workers, and Ryan was no different. He had always been studious and driven, and did some of his high school years in the Philippines and Switzerland before attending Indiana University, where he triple majored in geography, history, and political science. He always had one goal in mind: he wanted to be a lawyer. Jay said when his son finally achieved this, he lived and breathed it, taking his hard work home every day. He cared so much about helping people that sometimes clients would approach him, but with no means to pay. Ryan would take their cases on anyway. His dad said he took their phone calls and he made them feel like they were the only person on earth. Their problems were his problems and he wanted to solve them. One of his friends said Ryan was a feisty lawyer. When he walked into a room, he immediately demanded attention. But away from his work, he was far more quiet and shied away from any and all confrontation. Ryan was soon one of the youngest attorneys in the state to have his own law firm and never one to slow down. He hoped that one day he might even run for office. It was in 2011, after recently breaking up with his old girlfriend Lauren. He started talking to 19-year-old Shauna Hubers online after coming across her Facebook profile. Lauren said they had broken up amicably because they were both so busy with work, but she had always hoped that one day they might come back together, believing he was her true love. Shauna and Ryan had some mutual friends, one of which was Ryan's cousin, and he struck up a conversation after liking some of her photos. In April 2011, Shauna turned 20 and, after talking for a few months online, the pair met in person. She had earned a scholarship to study psychology at Kentucky University, while Ryan was almost 100 miles away in a new condo. Despite the distance and an almost 10-year age gap, their relationship definitely moved quickly, with Shauna soon meeting Ryan's family and spending holidays with them. This was a big deal for Ryan. His family and their opinions were so important to him. Friends of Shane have said much the same as Ryan. She was very charming, very attractive, and very smart, being in a lot of the gifted and talented programs since she was a child. She loved performing as well, musical theater especially, and friends said she was so naturally dramatic that it just made sense that she fell into this. She graduated university a couple of years quicker than her fellow students and moved on to her master's. Ryan and Shauna seemed perfect for each other on paper. So what on earth had happened that night? Well, back at the station, Shauna Hubers was talking a lot. She was read her rights and asked for a lawyer, but carried on speaking without one present. She was talking to anyone and everyone that would listen to her. Shauna told them from the off it was an abusive relationship. Ryan had always been nasty, cold, and aggressive, telling her she needed plastic surgery and she needed to lose weight. But now she claimed he had also become physically abusive. Everything had just gone too far that night and she was forced to protect herself. Shayna claimed that night he had been grabbing her and throwing her against walls, and just as she thought he had calmed down and sat at the table, everything went from 1 to 100 again. So where had the gun come from? Ryan had a license for his guns and had several of them around his apartment. There was always one in reach, she said. As the police went in and out of the interrogation room, Shayna could be seen singing Amazing Grace and dancing around, totally detached from everything, unraveling as the officers came and went, twirling around and snapping her fingers, singing, I killed him, I did it, yes I did it. The only thing she seemed bothered about was whether she would be allowed to take a shower and keep her phone if she went to jail. She talked so much and so fast that officers said they were switching out of the room periodically so they could take a break from her. One detective said she would burst into hysterical wailing. The second the door shut and someone left, she would just turn it off and instantly stop. He said he never saw a tear, just someone mimicking crying. One thing that also stood out as odd was the first person Shayna called. It was not 911 as they had first thought. She had actually called her mom. 15 minutes later, she then called 911. The only sign of a disturbance in his apartment was by the table where he had been shot. Shayna described him throwing her into a bookcase at one point, but the bookcase showed everything neatly lined up. Things on there would most definitely have fallen over if someone had been thrown into it. Shayna could not stick to a story for longer than a few minutes. On the 911 call, she said Ryan was holding the gun and she had had to wrestle it away from him. Now she was saying she had grabbed the gun off the table. With each version of events, the gun plus the two of them moved locations. Police simply did not believe any of her stories, and her actions when they were out of the room seemed just as damning as her words. They said although she had tried to frame the situation as self-defense, the way she was talking about what had happened just was not pointing in that direction. She had let the officers take photos of her body so she could show them some of the marks caused by Ryan in this fight. Although there were a couple of bruises and light marks, detectives weren't convinced these proved anything at all. Some marks looked very old and could have come from anything, and considering she had spoken about a really aggressive physical altercation, they were expecting something far more. She said at one point Ryan locked himself in his bedroom, which, if it was this violent altercation, police asked would Shayna not have taken that opportunity to just get out. But instead of doing this, she in fact made Google searches for how to unlock doors and how to pick a lock with a bobby pin. She managed to get into his bedroom, and this was when Ryan moved back out to the table. It seemed Ryan was trying to hide from her. After a lengthy 3-hour interview, there was nothing else police needed to hear. She had said it all and then some. They charged 21-year-old Shani Hubers with murder, and she was held on a $1.5 million bond. They felt even more confident when the autopsy revealed she had shot him 6 times in total, but the first shot was to the right side of his head at a downward trajectory, and this would have been enough to get him to fall to the floor. The following 5 bullets were total overkill. The first shot was not in front of him as he had stood up, it was at the side of him as he was sitting down. All the autopsy did was show someone shooting in a blind rage. It was close, it was personal, and it was angry, and it did not seem to point towards self-defense. As the police were building their case against Shayna, Ryan's family were also busy, taking on the awful tasks of funerals and finances. After the police got everything they needed from his apartment, his dad Jay went over. The blood was still on the wall and the floor. Jay said he just lay down next to it and screamed. I screamed at God, and I screamed at just everything, he said. He went back every day after that, before one day he decided he had to scrub the blood away. I just felt this need to take care of my son like I had for years. I didn't feel like it was right for anyone else to do it except me. I didn't want some stranger coming in there and seeing what happened to my child. I wanted it to go away, he said. People in Ryan's life said this narrative of him being an abusive and aggressive person was just so far from the truth. Ryan's best friend, Ali, said the first time she met Shayna, she just knew this was not the girl for him. She made it clear that Ryan was hers and he had no room for friends, especially female friends. She was glued to him all night in a way that frankly made people feel uncomfortable. His ex-girlfriend said that nothing about what Shayna was stating about their relationship rang true when they looked at their own time with him. It was possible that this time was different, but it just seemed so unlikely. And messages from Ryan's phone were definitely painting a picture of Shayna. Ryan and Shayna had been on and off for about 18 months, and despite their initial chemistry, their relationship quickly began to sour. Ryan had had other things going on besides an already tough job and relationship. He was in hot water with his old business partner who had launched a lawsuit against him after he left to start his own law practice. Shayna didn't seem to understand that Ryan's time had to go between other things as well as her. She would phone him repeatedly, once sent him 75 texts in just 1 hour. But the messages overall were literally in the hundreds of thousands. The police said, for every one reply she got from Ryan, she would send about 50 messages back, bombarding him until he replied again. But when Ryan would tell her he needed space, Shauna would just get in her car and drive to his condo, crying and begging him to take back what he said. She was completely obsessed with him, and she couldn't and wouldn't accept that he wanted to walk away. After a rocky spring, Ryan, against everyone's pleas, still hoped the summer might be different and decided to give things another go. But it was just not meant to be, and he told everyone he decided to finally end things for good. But Shayna did what she normally did, driving all the way out to see him. Ryan texts Shayna saying he was putting an extra padlock on the door and turning his phone off. She responded with over 100 messages before turning up with a spare key and letting herself in. He messaged his best friend Ollie on Facebook saying, also text a friend saying, now some of you may wonder why he didn't file for a restraining order, but under Kentucky law he didn't actually qualify for one. The law in Kentucky requires people to have been living together or to have been married for one to file a restraining order against the other. Anything outside of this is not recognized. At 12:30 a.m., Ryan knocked his dad's door with an overnight bag in his laptop. He said he needed a place to stay to get away from her. She was still there and he didn't know what to do. His dad said of course he could stay, but he had to do something about this. As Jay shut his son's door, he heard his phone buzzing away. Texts and calls coming in from Shayna. In the morning, went into Ryan's room. He said he felt his son's depression and stress. Ryan was lying on his front, head in his pillow. Jay gave him a hug and said, I love you. Ryan mumbled back, I love you too, Dad. Jay was definitely concerned, but he said as a parent, you have to give your children space too, space to be grown up. Ryan went back to his now empty condo and the cycle started again. One of Ryan's neighbors who had gotten close to Shauna said Shauna had shown her bruises allegedly at Ryan's hands. But she said she still saw her cook and clean for Ryan, buy him gifts and really dote on him. But friends as far back as high school said this wasn't exactly what it looked like. This was just the way Shauna handled rejection or being jealous. She was always extreme. She couldn't stand not getting her way with people, and would persist until she did. Emotions, whether they be good or bad, just consumed her, and forcing her way back into Ryan's life and his condo to do nice things for him, rather than give him the space he had actually asked for, just to sum this situation up. Shayna on some level knew he was still talking to her out of guilt, and she sent a text to a friend saying, he says he's only with me because I make him feel awful about it when I cry. Some people, including Shayna's mother, say Ryan was guilty of sending mixed messages to her. Every time he broke up with her, he took her back. But others that knew Shayna said she was a really hard person to convince of something. It wasn't over until she said it was. He didn't want to upset her because her behavior was even harder to deal with. But he didn't want to be with her either. He felt very trapped, and it was a lose-lose situation. Shayna needed constant attention and validation, and it seemed she wasn't devoted completely to Ryan as she had claimed. She admitted that they were both the other people, even texting a friend saying she was with Patrick and that she'd caught an STD but couldn't be sure who gave it to her. Allegedly, Shauna had fantasized about killing Ryan before at a shooting range. She sent a message to a friend saying she wanted to turn around, shoot and kill him and play like it's an accident. And looking at the days surrounding his death on October 11th, just one day before, things became messy again when Ryan and Shauna spent the evening at his condo together watching a political debate. Whatever the case may be, at around 3 o'clock that morning, Shayna called her mom crying about an argument they had had and saying she had chest pains. Unbeknownst to Ryan, Shayna's mom drove all the way over and let herself in to sit with her. Ryan woke up to find them both in his living room and he was freaked out to say the least. It was now October 12th, the final hours before Ryan died, and Shayna was bombarding him as normal. She told him she was angry he hadn't taken her to the doctors about her chest pains, But she was happy her mom had because they had given her medication for her blood pressure. There was no doctor and there was no medication. It was just another ploy for sympathy and a guilt trip. Later that day, Ryan was in the office and was actually getting ready to meet a date. None other than Miss Ohio 2012, Audrey Bolt. He left work as normal but mentioned to his colleagues on the way out he was seeing her in the evening for some drinks in a game of pool. He was really excited. One of his colleagues pulled a face concerned about Shayna's reaction. She even went as far as to ask Ryan to call a locksmith and pre-warn the police, but Ryan hadn't told Shauna and had no plans to. Now, whilst Shauna hadn't mentioned Audrey's name in any of her interviews, her Google history showed she had looked Audrey up and downloaded a picture of her just a couple of hours before Ryan was shot. Those final conversations in that Highland Heights condo will never be known. But many think that when Ryan told her it was over and asked her to leave, he could have mentioned his pending date with Audrey, who he was literally minutes away from meeting. This would definitely be a motive for her wanting Ryan dead, because put simply, if Shauna couldn't have him, no one could. With Shauna still maintaining her innocence, it was now time for her trial. No one was arguing about who had pulled the trigger that night, but her defense was still arguing that she had done it to protect herself against a violent man. And the prosecution were pushing for a murder conviction. Shayna had told many stories about that night to many people, but the defense latched on to one of her stories, which was that she had shot him as he was standing up from the table to come towards her, and she saw him as a threat. She then fired the other 5 bullets because she saw him still moving on the floor, and she still feared for her life. But an expert for the prosecution testified that the location of the first bullet showed this was simply not possible in any way, shape, or form. They knew Ryan had been shot in the right side of his head, and it was at a downward trajectory. The angle the bullet entered proved he had to have been seated, not standing up and not walking towards her. She couldn't have been in front of him across the table as she had claimed. She was right next to his side and above him. As his head fell forwards onto the table, his back was then exposed, and this was where the second bullet entered. As he fell onto the floor, she stood over him and continued to shoot. The gun had blood on it that had spattered back, further showing just how close she was to him. Releasing the safety trigger again by her own admission also showed a level of premeditation. This was not someone standing back, panicked, and defending themselves with a single shot in the midst of an aggressive fight. All of it added together showed murderous intent. The more the trial went on, the more people couldn't help but notice the similarities between Travis Alexander's murder at the hands of his ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias in 2013, a case that captured the world's attention and continues to do so to this day. Shayna's defense team dug up every message Ryan had ever sent where he showed the slightest signs of anger to prove that Shayna had been a victim. One example was when Ryan had found out his ex-business partner was suing him. He sent a message to a friend saying, "I just want to scorch the F********* ing earth and leave the city in a pile of rubble." The prosecution said yes, this was extreme, but it was clearly hyperbole. Frustration at a situation out of his control, it didn't prove anything at all about what had happened on October the 12th. And furthermore, messages like this were never aimed at Shayna. The only messages that pertained to her were ones where Ryan was talking about being afraid of what she might do to him. Ultimately, the jury did not believe her claims of self-defense either, and after just 5 hours of deliberations, Shayna Hubers was found guilty of the murder of Ryan Poston. Laura and Ryan's ex-girlfriend stood there with his family, incensed at how little Shayna cared. It was all one big performance for her and had been since the start. Shayna's mom was and still seems to be her biggest defender and said there was no way her daughter was capable of murder. Shayna Hubers was later sentenced to 40 years in prison with parole eligibility after 20 years. But in 2016, more shock was to come. Shayna's conviction was actually overturned. When it came to light that one of the members of the jury was a convicted felon, and under Kentucky law, felons are not allowed to serve on a jury. The juror in question said he had fallen behind on child support payments over 20 years ago, and although he pleaded guilty back in 1992, he had no idea this made him a convicted felon. Following this, a new trial was planned for 2018. While awaiting this, Shayna married an ex-inmate she met in custody, 42-year-old Richard McBee Jr. McBee, at the time was transitioning and went by the name Unique Taylor, said, "I had to create the perfect girl and had to spend the rest of my life with her. I would create Shayna Hubers." Shauna also had a new lawyer, and his line of attack was focusing on extreme alleged emotional disturbance she had suffered from Ryan's alleged physical and emotional abuse and past childhood trauma. Unlike her first trial, this time she testified in her own defense. Shauna admitted there were definitely issues in the relationship, admitting infidelity on both sides and going into detail about everything, including their sex life. She said she was unhappy about a lot of things, but she still loved him and always came back despite his behavior. He wanted me to be his incognito girlfriend, and he wanted me to talk 25% less. He always said I spoke too much, she said. Shauna claimed at one point they even agreed to bring another woman into the relationship, on the condition that Ryan put 10 photos of her back on his Facebook profile, a Facebook profile she would log in to frequently to block other women so they couldn't see it. A psychologist on the defense's side said that an insanity plea was not going to be an option. He did say, however, he believed that Shauna had borderline personality disorder, was narcissistic, and she had post-traumatic stress disorder and showed signs of secondary sexual abuse, trauma, and sexual dysfunction. He said at the time she shot Ryan, her psychological condition was seriously abnormal. Shauna also said she had been molested as a child, even accusing her own father of touching her inappropriately. For a second time, the jury deliberated and everyone held their breath. After being found guilty again, her lawyer asked the judge for a sentence of 20 years, saying Shauna could be rehabilitated and become a productive member of society one day. On October 18, 2018, Shauna was sentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after 20 years, and because she had already served 6 years at the time, her first parole hearing will actually be in 2032. His father Jay turned to Shauna's family and said, "Your daughter is sitting right there, breathing, laughing, and speaking. She may one day sit at your table for your Thanksgiving meal. Meanwhile, I wait in the middle of the night, every night, anguishing that I may forget the sound of my son's voice. My sole purpose in life for these last 3 years was to bring justice to my son's name. Now I have to find the next stage." Since her second conviction, Shauna still denies murder. She also announced that she was seeking a third trial. Shauna's marriage and prison ended in divorce in January 2019, and she announced that she was on the hunt for someone new. Using the writer-prisoner website, she said, "I have grown much since the 21-year-old girl I was in October 2012 at the time of my arrest. I'm looking for someone who won't judge me by my past, or by the woman I've become. No one really knows or can explain what I've been through besides me. It can be hard being judged by false conviction theories in the media used to obtain television ratings and a conviction and maximum penalty in court. In terms of social media and in the jury of public opinion, there are still people that believe she was acting in self-defense and is at her core a good person. Others believe she is exactly where she should be, locked up and unable to hurt anyone else. For everyone that knew Ryan, yes, she had been found guilty twice, which was a relief, but it was hard to fathom her one day being out, and frankly so soon. Ryan's dad Jay adopted his dog Oliver and takes him everywhere, believing a little part of his son is still with him that way. He was asked how on earth he could ever recover from something like this. He said, "It is horrible to wake in the dark of night with your heart feeling as though it is going to burst from your chest and tears running down your face. Since Ryan's birth, I gauged my well-being by his. My plan in life was always I would be with my son. I would be a doting grandfather, and that was my whole focus. My name ends with his name. He was my lineage. He was the last of me." On November 11, 1988, a tragic event occurred in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Canada. Byron Carr, a 36-year-old high school teacher, was being expected at a family gathering but failed to show up. Concerned for his well-being, his family attempted to reach him, and when they could not, they decided to visit his home. What they discovered was devastating. As law enforcement began their investigation, it became evident that Byron had been harboring a secret, one that he had concealed from nearly everyone, including his own family. The community of Charlottetown and Byron's family were left in shock, grappling with the reality that a murderer was at large. Questions loomed. Who could have perpetrated such a brutal crime against Byron? And what was the hidden truth he had kept? On Friday, November 11, 1988, Byron's family began to feel anxious when he didn't arrive for their scheduled family gathering, and their attempts to reach him by phone went unanswered throughout the night. The following morning, November 12th, they decided to visit his home in Charlottetown. Upon their arrival, they discovered the back door was ajar. Inside, everything appeared to be in order. His dog was barking from its kennel and dishes were left on the counter, but Byron was missing. With a sense of dread, they approached his bedroom door. There, on the bed, lay Byron lifeless. The initial shock quickly morphed into horror as they realized he had been stabbed. The police were called to the scene, and their arrival marked the beginning of a detailed investigation. Detectives concluded that Byron had been strangled, with the stab wound occurring post-mortem. Among the items found in Byron's home, police discovered significant evidence: a pair of unfamiliar underwear and a set of socks tossed in the trash. These items seemed out of place and were collected for further analysis. The underwear contained male bodily fluid from an unidentified man, unveiling a shocking truth to Byron's family. He was gay and had met someone shortly before his murder. To piece together his last moments, investigators interviewed his friends. They learned that Byron had met with them for coffee on the evening of November 10th before heading out to meet others in Charlottetown. Witnesses confirmed he had been at several bars that night, socializing and having a good time. Conversations with Byron's friends indicated that his last known activity occurred just before 3 a.m. on November 11th, when he had given a friend a ride home. The question remains, how did a man who set out for an enjoyable evening end up deceased in his own bed? The peculiar circumstances surrounding the case left law enforcement perplexed. Additionally, Byron's sexual orientation presented unique challenges for the investigation. Many witnesses and acquaintances were reluctant to come forward, fearing the repercussions of revealing their identities in a society that was not fully accepting of LGBTQ+ individuals. These elements contributed to the case quickly becoming stagnant. Some speculated that the police were not fully committed to the investigation due to Byron's sexuality. It would take many years before the Charlottetown police experienced a breakthrough that would help them reconstruct Byron's final known moments. 2 decades after the case had stalled, a significant development occurred when a key detail emerged. In 2008, a witness reported having seen Byron in the early hours of November 11th, 1988, shortly before his demise. This individual recounted that Byron had stopped at an intersection around 3 a.m. to converse with a man on a bicycle. After a brief exchange, Byron resumed his journey home, with the cyclist seemingly following him. This revelation provided fresh insight into the case, although the police were initially cautious given the 20-year gap. However, the witness's successful polygraph test lent credibility to their account. Authorities theorized that this unidentified cyclist had accompanied Byron home, where an intimate encounter turned fatal when the man allegedly strangled Byron. The intrigue surrounding the case intensified as additional witnesses emerged in the following years. One individual claimed to have observed an unfamiliar vehicle lingering outside Byron's residence on the evening of November 11th before it sped away. This scenario suggested that the perpetrator had revisited Byron's residence later that day, following the heinous act. Authorities speculated that the assailant either returned solo or rendezvoused with an accomplice at Byron's abode on the evening of November 11th. Their intent appeared to be the meticulous cleanup of the crime scene, erasing any trace of their presence, including fingerprints and DNA. To ensure no evidence was left behind, they donned socks. In a chilling act, one of them inflicted a stab wound on Byron, long after his demise, perhaps to leave a more macabre signature. Subsequently, the duo made their escape. A pivotal clue emerged from one of Byron's former students, a mysterious individual who harbored an obsession with Byron. Byron once confided in me about a man who frequently called him, seemingly seeking some form of connection. Whether fleeting or enduring, I cannot say. Regrettably, this lead proved to be of little assistance, leaving the investigation at a standstill. As the inquiry progressed, detectives crafted a profile of the suspect, aiming to unravel the cold case. The profile depicted a young male, aged between 15 and 25, likely leading a perilous lifestyle in Charlottetown. There was a suspicion that the assailant identified as bisexual or gay, possibly with a background of minor criminal offenses. Among the most significant pieces of evidence discovered at the scene was a pair of unfamiliar underwear and a handwritten note proclaiming, "I will kill again." Analysis of the handwriting revealed a unique style marked by circular motions and dotted circles above the eyes. However, investigators theorized that the note was not a legitimate threat, but rather an expression of rage. It was posited that the killer and his accomplice had returned to the residence in search of the misplaced underwear, inadvertently left behind after their initial encounter with Byron. When their search proved fruitless, they reacted in fury, leaving the ominous note as a remnant of their anger. The recovered underwear was identified as a medium-sized Bikini Styles' brand, featuring a 29 to 12-inch waist. In the years that followed, particularly during the 2000s, remarkable advancements in technology empowered investigators to meticulously analyze the male bodily fluid found on the fabric sample, allowing for the extraction of DNA. The findings unequivocally indicated that the DNA did not belong to Byron, nor did it correspond with any entries in the national database, an undeniable indication that it was linked to the perpetrator. Another pivotal piece of evidence emerged in the form of a discarded pair of socks, which also harbored DNA. Although the police successfully identified the individual who had worn the socks, they chose to keep this information confidential. This person was an accomplice of the killer, but tragically they had passed away in the late 1990s, leading the investigation to a disheartening impasse. Nevertheless, the Charlottetown police remained resolute in their quest to unravel Byron's case, regardless of the time it might demand. They diligently collected DNA samples from all individuals who might have had any connection to Byron, including men he may have encountered that fateful night, yet no matches were discovered. In 2018, the police received 2 enigmatic phone calls from an unidentified man near Charlottetown Mall. He asserted that he possessed vital information regarding Byron's murder, his voice laced with urgency. However, he vanished as swiftly as he had appeared, leaving no trace of his identity or means of contact. More than 3 decades had elapsed since Byron's tragic end, yet the truth remained out of reach. While the police believed they had pinpointed the accomplice, the identity of Byron's killer continued to linger as a haunting enigma. Then, quite unexpectedly, a breakthrough emerged, infusing the investigation with renewed vigor. After 35 arduous years, a glimmer of hope illuminated the Byron Carr murder case. In the spring of 2022, investigators took a bold step. They revisited the evidence from the crime scene and subjected a piece of underwear to genetic genealogy testing. This intricate process involved uploading the DNA profile to genetic testing databases, with the aspiration of uncovering a match among the relatives of the killer. It was a painstaking endeavor, but ultimately it bore fruit. In January 2024, the police finally unearthed a promising lead. Todd Joseph Gallant, now 56 years of age, would have been merely 21 at the time of the murder. The memories of that fateful November day in 1988 undoubtedly resurfaced for many individuals. At the time, investigators were unfamiliar with Gallant's name. He had previously been convicted in Prince Edward Island for breaking and entering in 1987. During that period, he resided in Charlottetown, not far from Byron Carr. Shortly after the murder, he departed for the United States, only to return to Charlottetown in 2022. On January 26, 2024, Gallant was apprehended in connection with Byron Carr's murder, facing charges of first-degree murder and tampering with human remains. While the investigation was beginning to piece together the narrative, numerous questions lingered. What truly transpired that night? What could have compelled Gallant to commit such an act? For Byron's family, the pursuit of justice remains ongoing. John, Byron's brother, was overcome with emotion when the Charlottetown police formally charged Gallant with the murder. His heartfelt reflections on his brother were deeply moving. The investigation encountered significant obstacles, including societal biases and the apprehension of witnesses, leaving many inquiries unresolved. As the trial approaches, the family holds onto the hope that Gallant's sentencing will not only provide justice and closure in this long-standing case, but also shed light on broader issues of prejudice and violence against the LGBTQ+ community. Was Byron Carr's murder motivated by animosity towards his sexual orientation, or is there a deeper narrative yet to be uncovered? The truth remains elusive for the time being, but it is only a matter of time before it emerges. On April 11, 1968, Hiram Ross Graham, a 47-year-old decorated World War II veteran, embarked on his usual milk delivery route but failed to return home. The milk company filed a missing person report later that evening when his truck did not arrive as scheduled. Despite extensive search efforts, it was not until the following day that he was discovered through an aerial search deep in the woods of Vero Beach, Florida. Tragically, Hiram Graham was found deceased beside his milk truck, having been shot 3 times in an execution-style manner. His murder occurred just days after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., raising concerns about a potential link to the prevailing racial tensions of the time. The motives behind the execution of this cherished local figure remain a mystery. Was it an act of personal vengeance? Or was it related to issues of race or robbery? These questions lingered unanswered for over 50 years until they were finally addressed in 2024. During the latter part of World War II, the U.S. Army engaged in the pivotal Battle of the Bulge against Germany, a conflict that significantly influenced the war's outcome. Hiram Ross Graham was among those who fought bravely in this battle, earning the Purple Heart Medal from the President for his sacrifices on the battlefield. Following the war, he took on leadership roles, including serving as chairman of band associations and as commander of disabled American veterans. In the 1960s, Graham relocated to Vero Beach, Florida with his family and began his career as a milk salesman for the Borden Milk Company. In addition to his sales role, he also served as the commander of the Civil Air Patrol for the district. Known for his warm-hearted demeanor, Graham was beloved by his customers, often assisting those who struggled to afford milk. He and his wife Doris raised 2 sons and a daughter, enjoying a fulfilling life in the picturesque city of Vero Beach, unaware that it would come to an abrupt end. On the morning of Thursday, April 11, 1968, Graham was following his regular delivery route in the Gifford neighborhood when a local girl observed him engaged in conversation. This moment marked the last time he was seen alive. After completing his delivery, Graham did not return home, raising concerns when he failed to bring the truck back to the Fort Pierce office of the Borden Milk Company. The Indian River County Sheriff's Office was notified, initiating a search in the vicinity of Graham's route, but he was nowhere to be located. As worries escalated, an aerial search was organized the next day to cover the city and surrounding wooded areas. From the air, officers discovered a disturbing sight in a forested region between North and South Gifford Roads, a milk truck with a man lying beside it. Upon reaching the scene, their worst fears were realized. It was Graham, who had been shot 3 times in an execution-style manner. An autopsy indicated that the shots were fired from a low-caliber weapon and approximately $70 to $80 was missing from the truck. Interviews with locals in the Oslo and Gifford areas revealed information about the girl who last saw Graham. She recounted that she approached his truck and observed him conversing with 2 African-American men. Graham assured her he would return shortly, after which the 3 individuals drove away in his truck. Shortly thereafter, witnesses reported hearing several gunshots. According to police reports, a Chevrolet from the early 1950s, occupied by 2 unidentified males, was seen speeding away from the area just minutes after the shots rang out. The girl's account indicated that the 2 men who entered Graham's milk truck were armed. Question lingered. Did Graham know them, or were they threatening him for reasons unknown? The circumstances surrounding their interaction and the subsequent events remained a mystery. Despite the diligent efforts of the authorities, both individuals involved remained unidentified. The perpetrators successfully evaded capture. On April 15, 1968, Larry Edwin Graham, just 16 years old at the time, received the heartbreaking news of his father's death from sheriff's officers. Hiram was laid to rest in Crestlawn Cemetery following a military farewell service. Over the subsequent 6 years, numerous attempts were made with more than 15 investigations conducted across the county to uncover leads on the assailants, yet none proved fruitful. The case of the veteran soldier's murder ultimately went cold. After 38 years, the tragic event surrounding Graham's homicide faded from memory. In 2006, however, Larry Graham stepped forward to advocate for his father's case. During an open interview with a local media outlet, he and his family accused a man named Thomas Williams from Indian River County of being responsible for Hiram Graham's murder. Larry expressed the family's strong belief in this individual's potential involvement, although the basis for this conviction was not disclosed. This marked the first indication of renewed interest in the case in nearly 4 decades, prompting the sheriff's office to reopen the investigation. However, before they could delve into the allegations against Thomas Williams, who resided in Indian River County, he sent a letter to the editor of a local newspaper. In his letter, he asserted that he had been unjustly implicated in a random case and claimed to have no knowledge of the situation. He firmly denied any connection to the case and cautioned the newspaper against tarnishing his reputation. Consequently, the investigation lost its momentum and once again fell into dormancy. Years later, in 2022, the cold case received its first significant clues when a lead emerged from an unexpected source within the county jail itself. An inmate whose name remains undisclosed but who had a connection to Thomas J. Williams reported that Williams had confessed to him about the murder of a milkman in the past. This inmate informed the detectives that Thomas Williams was a highly dangerous individual with a history of multiple arrests and convictions for various felonies. Seeking solid verification of this claim, the detectives pursued additional individuals associated with Thomas Williams. Their investigation led them to a woman from Miami in 2023 who had previously been married to Williams before their divorce. Although she opted for anonymity, she provided crucial information to the authorities. She testified that Williams had also confessed to her regarding the shooting of the milkman. With 2 independent testimonies from witnesses who had never met and were unaware of each other's statements, the detectives felt they had gathered sufficient evidence for a conviction. However, Thomas Williams had passed away from natural causes in 2016. Sheriff Eric Flowers noted that both witnesses chose to come forward only after Williams' death. While he was alive, they considered him a significant threat to their safety and that of their families. In their separate accounts, both witnesses expressed that Williams' death empowered them to speak out. As he was no longer a danger, I would have never said anything to you before. As long as he was alive, he was a threat to me and my family. We would have never told you, but the fact that he is now dead gave me the courage to come forward. One of the witnesses remarked. Larry mentioned that the murder of his father occurred during a period of heightened racial tensions following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. There is a belief that the father may have been targeted in the largely African-American neighborhood of Gifford. However, Sheriff Flowers has refuted these allegations, asserting that the primary motive behind the crime was robbery. Following Graham's passing, the board on Milk Company reported that approximately $70 to $80 was unaccounted for from the truck. Concerning the second individual who was with Thomas Williams during the incident, Sheriff Flowers indicated that they have a potential suspect in mind, but require further verification from additional witnesses. He has urged anyone with relevant information to reach out to the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. In April 2014, Thomas J. Williams was found guilty of murdering Hiram Graham. During a press conference, Larry Graham reflected on his father's brave life and the lengthy ordeal his family faced. After 56 years, the Graham family finally achieved closure, allowing the valiant Hiram Graham to rest peacefully as a war hero. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.